We're back with another transfer special before the season starts as well. You're spoiled. Look, although we're not expecting Manchester United to complete any random signings before the season starts against Brighton this weekend, there is still another 4 weeks of the transfer window left. And obviously Manchester United are in dire needs of reinforcements at this point. In the last 24 hours, there's been quite a few rumours online about different players. We're going to discuss De Jong. We're going to discuss Sesko. We're also going to have a little look into if United will also still pursue a forward player in the terms of Anthony or maybe even someone else. Is Sesko that man? We'll find out. Ben Jacobs at CBS Sports Golazo is with us. Go and give them a follow. Ben always has his ear to the ground as well, so make sure you go and check him out on Twitter too. At Jacobs Ben. Ben, thank you for joining us today. And I mean, it's in the midst of quite a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I'll be right in saying I follow you and I followed you for quite a long time. I always see you get a lot of Chelsea stuff, absolutely bang on the money, like the wider transfer stuff as well. But you always have an ear to your ground, specifically Chelsea. So you scared the living daylights out of me the other day when you started posting about some of the De Jong stuff which you've had come through. I will hit on that in a second, but you've also mentioned to me as well, we had a good chat behind the scenes about Chelsea's interest in Sesko, but also United's interest in the young Salzburg striker Sesko. So tell us, is this a real possibility for United? Is this a bigger picture around the Ronaldo situation? We'll come to that in a minute. But Sesko, what is the latest on that? Because there's a lot of talks of United being the front runners, or at least in conversations at the moment for the player.
Absolutely. I think any football fan, when they hear words like front runners or their club is confident, start to sort of shudder. And there's a mix of trepidation and excitement. And the reality of the situation is that Manchester United are deciding whether to pursue this deal. And the discussions that they have had have kind of highlighted a gap as far as the valuation over the player. And from the perspective of Salzburg, much like Leipzig, one of their sister clubs within the Red Bull group, they're tough negotiators. And let's not forget that Sesko has still got 4 years left on his contract. But Manchester United and Chelsea and a number of other top clubs are very much looking at Sesko. And I think what's interesting from Manchester United's perspective is that if Cristiano Ronaldo, who I'm sure we'll end up discussing in this show, stays, then it makes perfect sense to bring in a young player that can learn from him, that can be bedded in. And then as and when Ronaldo goes, whether it's a forced exit or he just ends up staying at the club, you've got young blood that you can bed in. And Sesko has a lot of really strong attributes that I think would suit Ten Hag's system. And he's already made 13 international appearances. He had a breakthrough season last campaign in the Austrian Bundesliga. He scored 11 goals, 6 assists, and that was only in 12 starts in all competitions as well. And I thought that he was quite impressive in the game that he played in pre-season against Liverpool as well. So there's no denying that Manchester United are interested. It's a race in many respects because of the volume of clubs circling. And at the same time, you've got to agree a price. And the truth is that Salzburg would probably prefer to keep onto him for one more season. But if they get a bidding war, then that could provoke them to U-turn on that stance and sell him. So Manchester United basically need to decide how much money they're going to push forwards. And this is one of the challenges, I think, generally with the window for Manchester United, that loosely speaking, their total cumulative budget is lower than a lot of their rivals, certainly other Champions League contenders. And I don't think that there's a hard number on it per se, but whereas Chelsea could hypothetically spend 250 million plus, even 300 million, I think that Manchester United will be 150 million or under. And therefore, rather than only looking at one signing, you have to almost accumulate the different options to work out what within their priorities, even with staggered payments and creative accounting, can be put into this window. And that's where De Jong is obviously quite problematic, because if it lingers consistently, then that's a huge chunk of the summer transfer budget. And if you remove that, you've got a bit more flexibility in the market. So Manchester United's interest in Sesko is genuine, but it is still going to be difficult to, one, beat off other competition, and two, at the same time, agree a price, because Salzburg's stance remains that they don't really want to sell, but there's so much growing and snowballing interest that they just might be persuaded. And Manchester United certainly haven't walked away entirely, but those initial discussions have absolutely revealed a differentiation in valuation over the player.
I think the Red Bull Group might be slightly surprised at the sudden excitement and interest in Sesko. And I say that because the way the Red Bull teams tend to move is you get a really exciting player out in New York, or you get a really exciting player at Salzburg, and then naturally what they do is go, let's get them into Leipzig. Let's get them straight into Leipzig, maybe even slightly too early, maybe bang on time. Usually you get that timing really right. Let's get them into Leipzig, and let's really show what these players can do on the bigger stage to then sell them on, or to push the Leipzig club maybe forward. And I think it's quite telling that Sesko wasn't pushed forward to Leipzig this summer. I think maybe with Sesko, and a few clubs might have seen this as sort of a domino effect of the Haaland situation, whereas players and clubs are looking at players like Sesko and thinking, well, we know they're in these groups. We need to get them out early. Otherwise, they're going to just go to another German team, or they're going to go to another team within these leagues, and then they're going to be worth double the money what we pay them now. And I think that's maybe it's the impact of Haaland that we're maybe seeing clubs like Manchester United go, we can't afford for these situations to keep happening. We've got to go out there and put some financial risk in young players within these groups that clearly have great scouting networks, clearly are nurturing really good young talents, and bring them to the club earlier, so that we can adapt them, so that we can push them forward, so we don't end up paying 80 to 100 million in a season or 2 seasons' time. But as I said, I think maybe for Salzburg, I don't know about you, I don't know what you're hearing, Ben. I don't know what your thoughts on Sesko are, if you've even seen much of him, because I've got to be honest, I haven't. I would have thought for a player, especially if you look at his stats, they're not, he's a young lad. I hate looking at stats and going like this, but it's not like he's done the whole Haaland thing and what we normally see between Leipzig and Salzburg. They've nearly got as many goals and assists as they've got games under their pockets. Like, he isn't that type of player. But from what I've seen, he offers a lot more as a pressing forward. He's got good strength. He brings others into play as well. So there's a good profile player there. But I don't know. I suppose what I'm getting at here, Ben, slightly confused. You know, if the talent there was absolutely the next best striker to go alongside Mbappe and Haaland, I would have expected Salzburg and the RB group to maybe trigger him onto Leipzig this summer, instead of maybe running that risk of him going straight from Salzburg to another club in Europe. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, the model works two ways with Red Bull. I remember speaking to the late Gerard Houllier, and he was obviously involved at Red Bull before he sadly passed away. And what he said is that you have to have protection of your clubs within the group. So the strategy isn't only business orientated to shift them to other clubs for large amounts of money. So in scenario 1, the player could just be sold. And in scenario 2, they could be moved through the group, as you've just alluded to. And to start with, in order to build funding and a model and attract young talent, the group, Houllier said, build itself as something that could give a star player who is young pathways to clubs outside of the group, which plays into the selling strategy. But of course, over time, it will evolve, because once they do that repeatedly, they get high volume of promising talent, usually quite young. And then at that point, you reverse the strategy and say, let's keep these players either at Salzburg to make sure that they start challenging in European competition at whatever level, or moved up to Leipzig, and then a chance of maybe going further in the Champions League. And then by hanging on to them at one club or the other, you hit a scenario where you're commercializing off them, not by selling, but by improving what you've got within the group. And I think that with Sesko, the interest is there because clubs see that potential, and they know that if they buy now, even above market value, he's either going to turn into, as you've alluded to, the next Haaland, for the sake of an analogy, or worst case, even if they overpay now, the value can still go up. And then at 21, 22, 23, and so on, if there is a scenario where he hasn't hit elite level consistently, you can still sell for either what you've paid or better. And then the thing to understand about Sesko is that he's got a lot of finesse for someone that's 6'4". And usually at this young age, when a scout views a player based upon potential and development, they're looking at two things. And again, Houllier said this, Barry Hunter said it as well, the chief scout at Liverpool. The first thing a lot of scouts look for with a young player is 1, first touch, 2, how they respond to when they lose the ball. And he ticks both boxes there. He's got an excellent first touch. He's clinical. He doesn't give up on plays. He's got acceleration over short spaces, agility, general pace, still young, and height as well to hold up the ball. So you can understand why he's such a strong pressing forward, or at least has that potential, because he's very aggressive and he works extremely hard off the ball. And that is exactly what Manchester United needs. So I think that gives you an insight into why there is appeal from Erik ten Hag and other Premier League clubs as well. He's not the finished product at all, but you kind of have to gamble on a teenager and a young player to get them early into your infrastructure and develop them through. And Manchester United and Chelsea are not perhaps the best at doing that. Whereas I think that under the new ownership at Chelsea, we've seen already that they're trying to bring in young stars and create better pathways into the first team. Whereas I think that Manchester United perhaps have been guilty in more recent years of not doing enough with their talent to show clear pathways. And if you compare that obviously to Sir Alex Ferguson, there was always that crop that came through in 4s, 5s, 6s. Now there's 1 or 2, they don't always succeed, but there isn't the same structure. So even if people name players that have followed that pathway from youth to under 23s to first team, it's not as consistent, it's not as structured, it's not as managed. And therein lies the problem at Manchester United, that the foundations of the entire football club are not as strong as they were under Sir Alex Ferguson. The way the management interact with the manager, the way the manager has historically, since Ferguson left, interacted with the players, the way the dressing room is unified. And if you're a young player like Sesko, that is going to influence your decision, because you're asking, where's my pathway? Is it to stay at Salzburg and then go to Leipzig, clear pathway, and then an acceptance that if he succeeds, he'll be sold at the age of 20 or 21 or 22. If he goes to Manchester United, every player is going to ask this question: is he playing with Ronaldo or is he playing without Ronaldo? Is he in the first team or is he in the under 23 squad? Is he being loaned out or is he integral to the first team plans? What happens if it doesn't succeed? What's the relationship like with Anthony Martial? Is Greenwood ever going to come back? Is Eriksen playing wide or central? Is Eriksen playing with Bruno? Is De Jong arriving or not arriving? There's too many questions.
But the one thing
for Manchester United.
Oh, sorry, you froze there, Ben. Sorry, carry on. Unfortunately for Manchester United. Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, unfortunately for Manchester United, other suitors have probably got a slightly clearer pitch. So that's the challenge, where Ten Hag has to get more actively involved in selling it directly. And I think he did that well with Eriksen. I think he did that well with Martinez. I think if Manchester United finally get De Jong, it will also be a lot down to Ten Hag. So that personal relationship of the manager, even though he's new and there's pressure on him, is so important to Manchester United in the next 30 days or so.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'd say, as a fan, just from a fan's perspective, I'm more confident that Ten Hag will get that right than maybe some of our previous managers have when it comes to shoehorning in players. I think it says a lot that Ten Hag came into the club and he still had time to maybe even address the scouts when he was given a job, to say, look, this is the type of profile I like, go and find me some players. But he didn't. He came straight into the club and went, these are the players I want. Some of them we've landed, some of them we haven't. Let's be honest. He wanted Timber at start, didn't get him, so he went for Martinez. Again, a familiar sort of player with attributes that he knew that he wanted to bring in to improve that defence. And I think ultimately with Sesko, if that's a player Ten Hag wants, and trust me, I don't think the United scouts have been all over Sesko. It must be a player that Ajax have looked at. 100%, because if you watch the way Ten Hag's Ajax played and you have a look at Sesko now, you could see Sesko being one of the forwards at Ajax, couldn't you? So I think naturally this is Ten Hag's previous work sort of coming to fruition, and him looking at players and how he'll push them forward. The one thing I would say with forwards at United, and this is always going to worry me about young forwards at United, maybe not so much Sesko, because we're buying him as a striker, as a centre forward. But I still go back to the days of Anthony Martial. Although he was a versatile forward, even at a young age, he was a striker. Like when he was coming up through the ranks and at Monaco, when he was playing, he was a striker. He wasn't a left forward. He was either one of the two, or he was a striker. Now, United used him as a striker for his breakthrough season, where he scored goals. And then we started to push him out wide to accompany Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Like Marcus Rashford was pushed out wide to, to get, when Rooney came back, Rooney in the team, Ibrahimovic, Cavani, et cetera, et cetera. Greenwood, obviously, we know where that's gone now, but he was playing right wing more than he was as a centre forward. Now, that's 3 players there that have been prolific, whether inside United's youth academy or not, as strikers at youth level, where United have turned around and gone, inside forwards. We need to play with inside forwards now. We're going to push you out wide to make way for someone else to come through the middle. And the reason why I sound more optimistic than ever with Ten Hag's approach is I think he's identifying players to fit his round holes within his team. And he only wants those players to fix his round holes. He's not willing to settle. So he has to try and remold those square pegs to kind of fit, if not. And I think we're maybe seeing that with De Jong. And I think maybe with Sesko, what he's thinking is, look, Anthony Martial, maybe he can do a job if he is there this season. Maybe Ronaldo will do a job if he stays this season. But what he's thinking is long-term, Sesko's got all the qualities I need for a centre forward for the next 3 to 5 years. Like, we need this young boy in. We need to get him amongst the team. We need to get him in the Premier League and we need to get him going. And I think that's exciting. It's exciting that there's a long-term picture there. And it sort of does feel to me like the right kind of player, and again, would I like him to Salzburg this season if he stayed and then United got him next summer to get something like 25 goals in 26 games? Yeah, I would, because that sort of shows the clinicalness. But also that player's then worth 100 million. So you leave him there now or you get him out now. And it's sort of a similar thing with Anthony, whereas Ajax are saying, look, we're pricing him at 80 million because we know if he has a good World Cup and a good season this year, he's going to be worth 100 million after all that. So it's one of those things where, of course, you've got to set your standards. And this is where Salzburg, for me, are getting it right in the market. 50 million euros for a player that next season could potentially be worth 80, 90. United have just got to decide whether that's the right move for them right now. But I don't think necessarily that the valuation is wrong. So it'd be an interesting one. But you've mentioned about other clubs being interested, Ben. So who are the other clubs looking at Sesko?
Well, I think there's a big variety, to be honest. We know about the Chelsea interest, but Chelsea are kind of determining which tact they go with. And Manchester United, by the way, I think are in a similar boat here. Do you buy young and therefore invest in your future? And from Manchester United's perspective, that suggests that Ronaldo will be forced to stay. Or do you buy older? And again, Chelsea have explored Ronaldo during this window, and Manchester United have been loosely linked with Jamie Vardy. And there's 2 opposite extremes there, because one player in Sesko and anyone similar to him is for the future, has sell-on value if it doesn't work out, has longevity at the football club. The other is a band-aid. And Manchester United in particular need to be careful not to keep signing band-aids. I think that it's fine if those band-aids actually get Manchester United into the Champions League over one season, but then they'll have to be busy in January or planning for next summer so they can then move quickly to rip off those band-aids, because otherwise you've got a football club full of 30-somethings. And there's definitely a dual strategy ongoing with a club like Manchester United simultaneously monitoring, loosely speaking, Vardy at the same time as discussing Sesko. And it's not unthinkable that what you do during a window is you buy one young and one old, and one for the future and one for now. So it doesn't have to be an either or. I think sometimes fans think, where's the strategy? Well, naturally, clubs work more than one window ahead. So you can buy one now and then still have somebody else that you can chuck straight into the first team. So Sesko's been looked at by a variety of different clubs. Barcelona have explored him. Bayern Munich have explored him. Chelsea have looked at him. There's several Premier League clubs that have made inquiries. And that's because some are looking for 2023. Some have decided they want to escalate it now. And therefore, the bidding war that Salzburg are hoping for is defined by the fact that there's this growing interest that I've already mentioned. So I think that the price is not just about overpaying from Manchester United's point of view and hoping he turns into, as you called it, a £100 million player. It's also simply down to the fact that Salzburg, with 4 years left on his contract, can hold out for whatever they like, because the player is not pushing to move too soon. And I think that's another key point, that if he was 21 or if he played a few more games, then you hit a point where the player can try and force his way out. And Brogier's a good example of that, even though he's now spoken to Tuchel and is likely to stay. A couple of weeks back, he was late to their preseason tour in America. He then got injured and was sent home early, and West Ham made an offer. And at that point, Broja was saying, well, I've already played in the Premier League. I've scored 6 goals for Southampton on loan. I think I'd like the move unless you can guarantee me my role in the team. Since then, Thomas Tuchel has been able to pacify the player, and Chelsea were always reluctant to sell. But in that scenario, you've got a player that maybe pushes for the move. Whereas with Sesko, I think he's perfectly happy at Salzburg for now, because he knows one window soon, whether it's this summer, January, or next summer, he's going to get that big move because his talent is undeniable. And therefore, it's up to the suitor to convince Sesko directly, which again is why Ten Hag is so important, that it's the right time to move now. So it's not only about the price, it's about convincing a young player that it's worth risking a move, where at the moment he's not under that much pressure. He's developing, he's enjoying life, he's settled, he's scored goals in a relatively modest amount of starts. But if he leaps to Manchester United and ends up on the bench, ends up in the under-23s, ends up loaned somewhere, it doesn't quite work out over the first 2 seasons. In other words, he doesn't hit the floor running, which is a big ask for a player that young. Then suddenly it could set him back a couple of years. And I think that is why, again, putting that pitch on a personal level to the human rather than the footballer to get Sesko is also going to be very vital.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm completely with you. There has to be a plan for him. If we're going to sign a young player like that with bags of potential, you've got to have a plan for him. Whether that's straight in the team, I saw whispers as well around maybe a loan back for a season, but I think that's very Ronaldo dependent. If you send him back on loan, I think ultimately United probably are looking at this right now a little bit like, well, if we can agree a fee, bring him in, then ultimately what we can do then is know that we've definitely got 2 strikers next season in Sesko and Martial. Martial will take the bulk of the Premier League games. I think Sesko will probably get Europa League and obviously good cup runs as well. Naturally, that's good because for Sesko, if he can come straight into United and play 26 games next season, I mean, that's superb for him. Like, that's regular football in European competition as well. You know, it's good for him. I think ultimately and he gets to learn Ten Hag's system next year, hopefully for playing a bit more competitive football, hopefully in the top 4. But I think naturally for United, if Ronaldo stays and we've got Martial, I think then we've got to look at, well, plan B. There's got to be a plan B with him. Well, we'll pay that money, but then Salzburg, would you be willing to have him back on loan? Or can we send him now on loan? There's no point in having 3 strikers and leaving the young one sat on the bench all season. There's no point in that at all. It should be like you say, if we've got interest in Jamie Vardy and we bring them both in, Jamie Vardy, unless he comes in and starts smashing goals in, or the older players smashing goals in like we know Ronaldo would do anyway, then it's got to be him on the bench. You've got to let the young player grow. You've got to have trust in the younger player to go out there and further the development that they're learning from even the older player on the training pitch and the manager on the training pitch to then go and do it in games. And that's just my concern with United. Like you say, do we have that plan? Do we have that pitch? I'm unconvinced, but fingers crossed. Lovely player by the looks of it. He showed some slick, class, skill, everything, finesse, as you say, against Liverpool. And you know, like I said, if you can agree a deal for him between 40 and 50 million, and he's with you for the next 10 years, banging in 25 to 30 goals a season, you're going to win trophies. It's good money. It's good value. And then even if not, he still holds his value because he's so young. I've seen a couple of reports on my timeline around United making initial bids and stuff around 40 million. I think that's just one to watch, to be honest, guys, and too soon to talk about. Let's move on to Frenkie de Jong. Let's start off with CBS Sports Golazo's exclusive with Laporta, the president of Barcelona. Did you learn anything new from that interview, Ben?
You always learn something new, but you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. So myself and my colleague Nico Cantor were out in New York. We spent a good hour with Joan Laporta, the Barcelona president, and we grilled him on a variety of topics. And with Frenkie de Jong, I asked, can you categorically confirm that de Jong will not join Manchester United? And he refused to shut the move down completely. So that gives Manchester United and their fans a little bit of hope. The challenge with Laporta is what he says in public and does in private, and how he outlines his strategy and then interacts directly with clubs are 2 completely different things. So there's smoke screens. And the thing to understand from a Manchester United perspective here is that everything is on Barcelona's terms. So it's not a case now of Manchester United pushing. It's all about Barcelona and what they choose to do. De Jong is on record as saying he wants to stay at Barcelona. So from Manchester United's perspective, it's not really yet about a threat from Chelsea, despite Thomas Tuchel's interest. It's more about, can any club persuade De Jong to leave Barcelona Football Club? And Barcelona are biding their time. So either under scenario A, they can just get him to take a roughly 50% pay cut, or B, they can force him out the club. And the only way this is going to move is the point at which Barcelona tell De Jong, you are 100% surplus to requirements. We do not want you. On record, Laporta says, the player wants to stay. I want to keep him. That's what you would expect. But the reality is Barcelona are dragging out the De Jong situation so they can get other names into the football club. And if those names come off, they'll either need the transfer fee or the space within their squad in order to register. So it's kind of interesting how De Jong, according to Xavi, was a player that the Barca manager would like to suddenly use as a centre-back, but Jules Koundé's come in. And then if he's a midfielder, Barcelona would love Bernardo Silva. And CBS's understanding is that Barcelona have told Manchester City to expect a bid before the window shuts, and that Silva is very open to a Barcelona move. So then you get a scenario where this is actually dragging on potentially because Barca want Silva in. And as soon as they know that they can get Silva, they suddenly need the De Jong transfer fee, even if they activate their third lever. And regardless of the fee, they'll still want him off the wage bill and they need the squad space. So as a Manchester United fan, the club can't do much more. They've agreed a fee of around 85 million euros. They still don't categorically know if De Jong wants to join because, again, De Jong's preference genuinely is to stay at Barcelona. So how can all of this change? The only way is if Barcelona say to De Jong, listen, we know you want to stay, but we want you out. And at that point, the player can either put his foot down and say, I'm not going to play that much. I'm not taking a pay cut. I'm just going to sit here and take my wage until 2026. Or he can say, there's another club out there that will pay my 17 million odd in deferred wages, will play me every week, will make me one of their highest earners, and I'm going to go. And then he would either have a decision to make between, does he want Ten Hag and European football with Manchester United, or does he want Tuchel and Champions League football? Or again, as I said before, is he just going to sit there and take his money? Because it doesn't look at this point like he wants to take the pay cut. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and Manchester United are powerless. A move to Old Trafford, not impossible, but Manchester United can't catalyse it until Barcelona work out what is going to happen with all of the other moving pieces. So my feeling from talking to Laporta and sources when I was with the Barcelona team in New York is essentially that Barcelona will do this on their terms. They'll use a chunk of the window remaining to determine whether they need to sell him, whether he could still take the pay cut, and whether Silva is a viable transfer that they can pull off speedily. And then that will all impact whether De Jong is forced out the club. And nobody's going to get De Jong unless Barcelona explicitly go to De Jong and say, we want you out this football club. And that is why Chelsea at the moment are saying to Barcelona, we don't want to get involved in this if it's going to be a saga as per Manchester United. We are interested, but unless the player tells us he wants to join and it can be done quickly, then we're going to back off until things are clearer, because as per Manchester United's experience, if they don't, it just becomes very painful and frustrating and can impact the entire window.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more of that interview, some very interesting quotes from Laporta, go and check out CBS Sports Golazo. It's a very interesting interview. I suppose my initial question, Ben, is, and I think this is what a lot of fans are saying, and a lot of reporters have told me, United must have some sort of inkling that should the saga and mess that's very much Barcelona's making with Frenkie de Jong be sorted, surely Manchester United has some sort of inkling from agents or player that a move there is possible, and that personal terms and players' terms shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think any of it's a problem, providing that De Jong wants to leave the club or is forced out, because we've not got to that eventuality. De Jong is going to keep saying he wants to stay at Barcelona and doesn't want to take a pay cut. And if Barcelona keeps saying on record, we want you at the football club, he can hold them to those words, whether they're genuine or not. And that's why he's waiting for a longer period of the window. De Jong's not going to rush and move until he's fully aware, genuinely, rather than in games, of exactly what Barcelona and Xavi's position is. And as I said before, if Xavi keeps saying, I like the player, I want to keep the player, if he's part of their pre-season tour, and if Laporta says consistently on record to outlets like us in an exclusive interview at CBS that he wants to keep the player, then in the gamesmanship of negotiation, De Jong can keep saying, but you've said on record that you want to keep me. So is that a lie? You've said I don't have to take the pay cut. Is that a lie? And that actually puts Laporta in quite a difficult position. But obviously De Jong needs to think about his football and how often he's going to play, and can he get more preferential terms and those owed wages by making a move. So I think that Manchester United are not stupid. They're not going to hang around on a deal if it's a 100% no. But the reality is there is nobody on the player side, on the Barcelona side, that can tell you it's 100% yes or 100% no. And I think as journalists, we get pushed and people want black and white, especially on social media. And when you don't give black and white, you're sitting on the fence. But responsible journalism is to give you the parts as of a certain day or time of recording in this case. And that is the reality. And if that changes tomorrow, or if someone goes out on a limb and says will join or won't join, then they might be right. But the accurate reflection of now is that even De Jong does not know who his next club is going to be. But what he does know is that if he had his ideal wish, he would like to stay at Barcelona. And that is the reflection. And until, as I say, Silva comes in or doesn't, Barcelona find out if they've got enough through their lever activations to register incomings and spend some more. Until they do the maths on other outgoings, they don't know categorically whether they have to sell him, whether they want to sell him, or whether they can keep him. And even potentially forcing him into taking that pay cut may change the level of thinking amongst the executive staff at Barcelona as well. And at Manchester United are just a spectator in that respect, because they can do no more. They've done their part. They've got the fee. And once you've got that agreement, all you can then do is go to the player. And they've gone to the player. And effectively, they've been told it's on hold until there's more clarity. So they have to wait a little bit and be patient on this one. Or if they are impatient and frustrated, they have to find another target.
Yeah, I think, and I'm supposed to be one of those people, but you, to your credit, was one of the only a very few when reporting the Chelsea links the other day, actually emphasised in your tweets and in your article that the interest has actually been there for quite a while, and it's not necessarily new news in terms of, we know Bowley went and met Laporta just before Murto and Arnold did. About 6 weeks ago now. Like we know that Barcelona have been having conversations with Chelsea about a number of players. And of course, any good businessman, club owner, sporting director, Frenkie de Jong's being linked to a player of Frenkie de Jong's qualities, being linked to a move away from a massive club. And you're a big club, and you want to compete. You're going to ask about those players. You're going to talk about those players. But I think you also put it nicely as well, in terms of that, like, Chelsea could come in with a bid for De Jong tomorrow. They could match United. Barcelona could say, yeah, roughly, we'd agree with that. Doesn't mean De Jong's going to go anywhere, because De Jong still is owed a load of wages, and Barcelona are still saying stuff actively in the press, and De Jong's still wanting to sit out and stay at Barcelona. So I just think it's very much that fans are just wanting an answer, when actually the window always moves like this, and clubs are always showing interest, and clubs are always having conversations about players. And you know, and I think naturally Manchester United, well, I think for them, like, Ten Hag it's the player he wants, and maybe Barcelona might be slightly behind this league. They might not slightly be behind this league with Chelsea. It might come from somewhere else. I mean, I'm not trying to ask for that to be uncovered, but it's in Barcelona's interest for another club to be seriously interested in De Jong, because if one of them two clubs turn around and go, right, if we can settle this now and we can cover his deferred wages, will that push him out of the club? Barcelona win, right, Ben? Barcelona win, because naturally for them, that is the biggest sticking point at the moment. And naturally then it's a case of, well, we can give you your wages. You're not going to play next season. Now we'll be honest. Can you go, please? And it will push then those little pieces of the jigsaw that are a little bit loose, a bit tighter, right? But so it's in their interest that other clubs want him.
I mean, it's in Barcelona's interests, unless they're genuine in their desire to keep him as a squad player.
That's true. Yeah.
And the thing is
you think they are?
Well, I mean, they're saying they are on record, but as I've already illustrated, what Laporta says and what Laporta does are two completely different things. And if they get Silva and now they've got Koundé, then the versatility that De Jong could offer as midfielder centre-back has a little bit less worth. But fundamentally, Barca and De Jong need to be on the same page before there's any movement. And that's the key, because Barcelona can offer him while saying they want him to stay. They can agree a fee while saying they want him to stay. But if when they actually openly and honestly get in a room with De Jong and stop the games and talk face to face, and De Jong says, I'm not leaving, then at that point, Barcelona will have to respect his contract. There's nothing they can do. And obviously, he says his dream club is Barcelona, but if he's sitting on the bench and not involved and shunned and being forced out, then the dream club turns sour. And I think to some extent, even though it's a slightly bizarre comparison, look at Dean Henderson and his comments after leaving Manchester United, where he basically said, I was promised I'd be the number one. I got COVID. I came back. I wasn't the number one. And the treatment of me was, to use his words, quote, criminal. And what that shows you is that when you get a player that's really excited to play for a club, thinks they're integral, believes they've got a future, if then something changes and the player doesn't like the treatment of the club, suddenly the club is not their dream club anymore. And it's a harsh way of driving a player out. But if in the next 30 days as the season starts, De Jong is, I'm not saying, by the way, that Barcelona will do this. I'm just purely putting it out there hypothetically to paint a worst case extreme. If Barcelona say to De Jong, you're training alone, you're not in the squad, you're on the bench, but you're never used, you're behind in the pecking order. If Xavi goes in press conferences and says he's one of them that we would now like to leave because we've brought in Silva, again, all this is just hypothetical. But if all of that happens, then put a mic in front of De Jong and say, is Barcelona still your dream club? As the window starts to shut, doubt creeps into his mind about, is it really the right decision to stay when everyone wants me out? But at the moment, he's not had that scenario because Laporta says on record that the player is valuable. Xavi says that he's great because he can play centre-back or in midfield. And in private conversations between Xavi and De Jong, seemingly he is open to even taking the pay cut. So there's a lot of competing narratives here. There's a lot of PR, there's a lot of spin, there's a lot of false messages. And unfortunately, none of it's got anything to do with Manchester United because they're the club that have just agreed an offer. And the next stage should be simple because you literally should be able to go to the player and say, hello, we've agreed a fee. These are our personal terms. Do you accept? Please give us your answer in a matter of days or weeks. But instead, Manchester United cannot advance this until Barcelona and De Jong have a frank conversation and get on the same page.
Sort out their amicable breakup, I think is the term we're looking for. Come on in, look, Ben, just really briefly, because I just want to have a quick 2-3 minutes on Cristiano Ronaldo and some of the reports that have come out. Just very, very briefly, I'm not asking you what will happen. I want to ask your gut feeling. You've been around transfer windows for a very long period of time. I mean, have we seen deals like this before in the past? I don't know. It sort of feels a little bit different, this, doesn't it? Does he go to United? Does he stay at Barcelona? Does he go to Chelsea? Does someone else come in? Like, where's your gut personal feeling at with where De Jong goes?
Well, I think that De Jong, if Barcelona get Silva, will be sold. That's my personal opinion. But there's too many moving parts for that personal opinion to necessarily hold too much worth. But talking to sources, my feeling is that Barcelona are not genuine in their desire to keep De Jong. And if they were, they wouldn't have gone back and forth in such a painstaking way to agree a fee with Manchester United in the first place. So whether Manchester United get him or not, the fact that so many talks were there around agreeing a fee and the finesse of negotiation to get to that 85 million euros fee shows you the time and energy put in by both clubs means that the door at Barcelona's end is open to let De Jong leave, regardless of what they actually say. So then it all depends on, is there a hijack? Is there another suitor? And if we get towards the end of the window and Barcelona get Silva, or think they're going to get Silva and need the De Jong fee first, then they'll drive him out of the football club. And then, of course, at the moment, Manchester United are the most advanced. So can they then swoop in and persuade him to join, or will the deal be hijacked? I can't tell you at this stage whether there's a likelihood of Manchester United over Chelsea, because one club, United, have agreed a fee and the other club are interested and in talks and optimistic of agreeing a fee. And until they're head-to-head with agreements, the player will not make up his mind and continue to say that he wants to stay at Barcelona. So it's kind of irresponsible journalism this early to say he would pick one or the other, but sources from my time in Barcelona have intimated, and I think Gary Neville alluded to this as well, that he would prefer Champions League football and London over Manchester. But there's that Ten Hag factor there to try and change his mind. So I think it's a really intriguing one from a neutral point of view. I'm sure Manchester United fans are fully frustrated, but that is the situation at the time of recording.
Yeah. Really interesting, and we'll see where that goes. I think for me personally, just to quickly add a slight bit on for that, as a Manchester United fan, if I was the United board, I'll be asking Barcelona how much they're willing to pay for Bernardo Silva and saying, sort the De Jong situation out now. We'll give you the whole fee for Bernardo Silva. We can City. Perfect. I think Bernardo Silva is a fantastic footballer. We can City, get him off to Barcelona. We'll take De Jong. Done deal. See you later, everyone. Premier League, it's coming home. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? And let's chat about Ronaldo just briefly. I just want to ask you one question on Ronaldo, Ben. In your mind, your expertise, where you're at with what you know, what's happening with Ronaldo over the next couple of weeks?
The situation is very clear and divisive, isn't it? That Ronaldo wants out. It's as simple as that. Jorge Mendes has made that clear. Manchester United's stance is not for sale, but the reality is that will not be tested as a club position until there's a concrete offer. And at the moment, there are no concrete offers for Cristiano Ronaldo that tick the boxes. So the interest has come from Mendes driving Ronaldo to certain clubs. And he is open to a move to Atleti. And Chelsea also discussed Cristiano Ronaldo. Thomas Tuchel is yet to be convinced. And I think only if Chelsea don't get other attacking targets may they U-turn on that position, because you never tend to burn a bridge fully during the transfer window. But the fact that Chelsea are looking at Sesko, loosely speaking, considering Aubameyang, and then Ronaldo, door not 100% shut solely because the ownership group can see the appeal to the brand, it all tells you that there is a possibility very late in the window that someone's going to try their luck with Ronaldo. Because if the situation behind closed doors at Old Trafford becomes untenable between the club and Ronaldo, and Ten Hag and Ronaldo, then you get a scenario where Manchester United may U-turn on their official stance of not for sale, as and when we get a concrete offer. And it could be a loan deal, or it could be a permanent sale. So I think Manchester United would love it if the window just shut on game one of the season against Brighton. That is their de facto unofficial deadline in their head, because they just want Ronaldo playing. He may only be on the bench against Brighton, but I think they just want him playing and scoring and hoping that United make a good start to the season, and that changes everything, because then Ronaldo might say, this year's going well, let me be the figure that drags us back into Champions League football, and then extend for another year. And then he does have Champions League football. But I think that in all of this, because the deadline isn't the Brighton game, we're still going to see somebody from somewhere, regardless of people denying it, regardless of other clubs saying they're not interested. We're going to see someone with Champions League football trying their luck when it's the desperate last week or hours of the window, and they can put something down and see how Manchester United react. And that is only when the not for sale stance will truly be tested. And the challenge for Manchester United is that it affects the whole window, because everyone joining will ask, am I playing with Ronaldo or without Ronaldo? And Ten Hag cannot frame a team around Anthony Martial. So he needs to know, as a new manager, Is his strategy still Ronaldo focused? And United also obviously don't want to leave too much of the window and then have to scramble for a Ronaldo replacement, which again is why if they were to entertain a deal, they might consider somebody going the other way to make sure that they're not left short. So there's a lot of kind of permutations and possibilities here that are still unknown. But in an ideal world, Ronaldo would like to still leave Manchester United. And I don't even think it's only because of Champions League football. I think it's also down to the fact that he doesn't want the burden anymore. He's 37 years of age. He's got great love for Manchester United. Perhaps every step of the way hasn't been handled brilliantly at the player's side, but he's had to make his position clear. And I don't think it's down to only disappointment in the transfer window. I don't think it's down to not wanting to work with Ten Hag. I think it's a realization that if he is to be the player that drags Manchester United through every big game, as proven under Solskjaer and at times with Ralf Rangnick, and we all remember those games historically like Villarreal and the 2 against Atlanta, and how Ronaldo basically single-handedly bailed Manchester United out of trouble. And at 37 years of age, in a World Cup year, mid-season, which is crucial, if he's to expend that energy mentally and physically, raising everyone's game, then suddenly his longevity is hit and he's got fatigue physically and mentally. And I think part of it is about competing, but part of it's about being given a helping hand so he can join a club where someone else is scoring 15 goals, where the service from both sides is strong enough to allow him to play to his strengths, where he doesn't have to play in every single game. He can only play in maybe the big games. So I don't think it's so much ego as actually Ronaldo wanting help. And he's not going to get that day on day at Manchester United because he perceives there to be a gulf in talents between where he's at, even at 37, and where some of the other standards of the squad players are at. And that is part of why he wants driven out. So I do think that somebody before the window shuts will make a concrete offer for Cristiano Ronaldo. And then obviously Manchester United have got a big decision to make.
It's very much a watch this space. Ben, as ever, amazing detail. Thank you so much for being so far. I really appreciate it. Hit a like on this video, smash the subscribe button too. You can catch Ben and his team over at CBS Sports Golazo, of course, the home to European football, and where you can find some of the best transfer news stories, but also when the season starts, the home of goals. That's where you need to go and see that all the balls in the back of the net, of course. A busy season coming up for you, Ben. Hopefully we can catch you over the next month or so before the window closes as well. Really appreciate your time, mate. Thank you.
Cheers, Ben. Look forward to it. Good luck to Manchester United for the new season.
Cheers, mate. We need all that luck. Trust me. Hit subscribe, guys. Make sure you like the video, and ciao for now.